Welcome to the Forms Participation Project for the WV K-12 education problem. In this project, we're going to look at how we can create and use forms to simplify and structure being able to view and edit data in our databases. To get started, I've downloaded and extracted the provided data files for this project, and I've opened up the starter file in Access. In Access, forms allow us to view data that we have stored in a table or query. And we can also go and modify the data that's stored in our database through the form. This is a little bit different than a report, where a report is only going to allow you to view the data and not change it. There's two primary ways in which we go and create forms in Access. Both of them are through the Create ribbon. One of them is going to be what we'll call the Form tool, which is just this one that says Form here under Forms, and then there's also the Form Wizard. Form works well if you have just a basic table you're trying to manipulate, or you have a query that you want to be able to view the results from maybe something a little bit more friendly manner than just looking at the query results in datasheet view. But it's going to give you pretty much just a one-size-fits-all solution. Form Wizard is a lot more customizable. We'll take a look at how to use both options here. For our first form, we're going to go and want to be able to view information on different school districts and their annual statistics. For this, we're going to create a form based on the districts table. To go and use the Form tool, you first of all just want to click in the Objects pane on the item that you want to serve as the basis for your form. So it can be a table or it can be a query. Once you have it selected, on the Create ribbon, click the Form button. You can see here it's gone and generated a form for us. What it did was it pulled the two fields that were part of the districts table itself, and then it looked and saw that we had a relationship, and it went and added a embedded data sheet view here that shows the related information in the district statistics table for this particular district. Here you can see that we're in layout view. There's a couple other views that we can also look at. Form view is basically kind of the end result. This is what users who are interacting with your form are going to see. Layout view is the easiest place if you need to go and make changes to go and do that. Design view is an older way of making changes to the way that forms are laid out. Design view is much more complicated to work with. I would really suggest that you go and stick with layout view if you need to make changes, if you can. And you can switch back and forth on the home ribbon. We're going to head over to layout view here, and we're just going to make sure that we have good names for each of the different description labels for these fields here. In this case, since we just had one-word descriptions as our field names with district and region, we don't need to change anything. If we had a case where we had a multi-word field name where we had omitted the spaces in between, we would probably want to go and change those here to go and put those spaces back in, just so that they looked more like English words for end users. But in our case, we're in pretty good shape as far as things go right now. Let's go ahead and save our form, and we want to save it as districts, which happens to be the default name since that's what we created this form based on. I'm going to click OK, and then I'll close out of this form. Once we've saved our form, it's going to appear in a new Forms category on the Object pane. We can double click on the form to open it back up in Form view. So if I want to go and change the name here for a district, I can, for example, go through and say this is going to be Barber County now, and then it's going to commit that change to the database. Now, in my case here, when I went and made this be Barber County, we're running into a situation where there aren't any associated district statistics for Barber County. So that's why that grid went and reloaded. It's not going to actually even let me save my change because of referential integrity. So I'm going to tell it OK here. I'll go and back out the change by hitting the escape key, and then you can see it's reloaded the data from the related table. In that way, this works a lot like if you're going and editing the table directly inside of datasheet view. It's just we can go and structure things a little bit more with different form fields to make it a little bit more user-friendly. Now that we've seen a little bit about how things work, let's go ahead and close out of this form again. While the form tool is great for being able to quickly create forms, it doesn't give us any opportunity to customize what the form actually looks like without us doing it manually at the end. The form wizard is another way that we can create a form, and it gives us the ability to choose what specific fields we want to have on our form, and also gives us some control over how the form is laid out. To use the form wizard, we want to go to the Create ribbon, and under the Form section, we'll click the Form Wizard button. It's going to launch this dialog box first, and this is going to be where we'll specify which fields are going to appear on the form. They can come from tables or from queries. Depending on the fields that we specify here, this is going to drive some of the later choices in the wizard, including for things like forms with subforms. For this form, we want to be able to display and edit information on annual statistics for the different schools. We're supposed to display each school's name in a main form, and then we're going to have an associated subform that will display a data sheet with all school statistics table fields. So for this form, let's start off by going to the schools table. This is where the school name is listed. I'm going to click the single right arrow, which will go and add the school name field to the selected fields list. I then want to head over to the school statistics table, and I'm going to click the double right arrow, which will add all the fields from that table. I'm going to go ahead and click Next here, and Access looked at the fields that I chose and saw that there was a relationship between the tables that they're involved in, and so it gave me the opportunity here to choose that I want to do a form with subform. This is actually what we're going to want to do per the instructions, but let's just take a look at some of the other choices available for us here. Viewing by schools, we can also do a linked form where basically we'd have a main form for the school name, and then there would be a button that would launch a separate form with the details about each annual set of statistics for that school, rather than embedding that data sheet inside my main form. The other way to look at things is by school statistics. And here the school name is just going to be another field that'll display. We want to do by schools though, and we want to do it as a form with subform. If you did not choose the correct set of fields, if you don't go and pick ones that are spread across different tables that have relationships between them, this wizard may not give you this option to do a form with subform. So if you don't get this and the instructions are telling you that you should have a form with subform, you probably did not select the create to create it based on the correct fields, or there's something wrong with your relationships. Let's go ahead and click the next button, and the instructions tell us that we should use a data sheet for our subform. So this option is fine. There's also this tabular way of looking at things, but we're going to choose data sheet to be consistent with the instructions, and we'll click next. On the final step here, we need to go and name our form and subform. We can pretty much call them whatever we want, but what I would suggest that you do is go and give them matching names. That way it's obvious that the two of them go together. In the instructions, we're saying that we want to call our main form school data, and the subform is listed as school data subform. Having school data in the name for both of them makes it really clear that they're supposed to go together, and putting this subform suffix on the end makes it obvious that that particular form is intended to be a subform. I'm going to go ahead and click Finish, and then we can see what things look like. In this case here, it went and brought in the name of our school, and then we have this subform with data about the different schools and school years within that school that's currently being displayed here. If we want, we can go and clean up our naming so it's a little bit cleaner here. Right now, just grab the field name as it is already. So it has school name, no space. Then we have school data. It went and automatically picked up. Let's go and change to layout view. And I'm just going to double click here where it has school name and type in a space. And I'm going to do the same thing down here where it says school data, just so that these look a little bit nicer. This up here is the name that it pulled from what I actually called the main form. I'm going to leave that part alone. I'm going to go ahead and save changes to my form, and then I'll close it. You can see here in the objects pane we have our main school data form and we have school data subform. Now districts only is a single form. Technically, the way this is set up here in districts, this is actually not a subform, it's just an embedded data sheet. That's why it doesn't have a separate subform listed. But that's kind of one little difference in behavior that you might catch between a form tool created form and a form wizard created form. It's just whether or not you see a separate subform broken out. Let's take a look at the analysis question for this project. I'm going to open the analysis questions table, and we'll start to enter our answer, listing this as question number 5B. The prompt says that the number of enrolled students for most of the districts experienced a decline starting around the 2015-2016 school year. We're asked what we think is a reason for this downturn. If we take a look at query 5A, we can sort of see this in action. We have the district and we have the school year, and we can see the enrollment. So looks like we kind of peaked right around 2450 in Barber County, for example, around 2014, and then we were down to 2400 in 2015, 2016, 23, 24 in 2016, and it's dropped down from there. Some districts now, like Berkeley, did see increases, and the overall population over in Berkeley County has continued to increase. But this same sort of trend here with numbers basically starting to fall off after 2015, it's repeated pretty much throughout the state. And so let's think about this here a little bit. Students who are entering school are going to be, 5 or 6 years old, so they would have been born kind of around the 2009, 2010 time frame. And if we think what was going on around then, especially if we kind of think further back 9 months before then, that's when we really started to see the impact of the Great Recession. We started to see a lot of people lose jobs, the economy was very unstable. A lot of people decided that maybe it wasn't a great time to have more kids, so people would go and put off having more children. That's what we're seeing just several years down the line. There's an echo where school enrollment is declining because several years earlier, people decide to put off having children. So I'm going to go ahead and type a response based on that. And that's pretty much what I wrote here, is it's just likely an echo of the Great Recession. I'm going to go ahead and click out of that record, so that saves my changes. I'm going to close out of analysis questions. I'm going to wrap things up by doing a compact and repair on this database. So we'll head to the Database Tools ribbon and click Compact and Repair Database. At this point, we're finished with this project. We want to close out of Access and then submit our file.